Hi everyone. On today's show, we're getting into what AI is actually doing to buildings and spaces and how these spaces are getting designed. I have Michael with me today, who runs growth at FORMAS.AI. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Diksha, for having me. Hi, everyone.
Nice. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and FORMAS, maybe?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my name is Michał, as you already know. I'm a growth manager at FORMAS.AI, which is a AI orchestration platform mostly for designers and architects. Based in Singapore, operating worldwide. And it's a pretty fresh company. We've officially started this year. However, the company's been being built by Carlos and Iping, the founders, since last year. And yes, we are growing. We're getting bigger, and getting more fun.
Yeah, you guys recently raised, so congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the founders who raised the money. But yeah, we had a quite a nice round, and it allowed us to grow quite significantly, which is great.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you guys must be getting to work on interesting problems with like a lot more bandwidth in terms of like the finances, with the latest funding, and also since AI is growing so much, so it's like just exciting. All right, so I just wanted to get in a little bit of detail, like what do you guys do? How do you help designers and architects? And I have read a little bit about you, and the way you guys are using AI to turn simple sketches into like walkthroughs for architects and interior renders and whatnot. So for someone who's outside architecture, what was the life before before AI, and before players like you kind of came in, and yeah, and how long did this conceptual work usually took before this, just to give our audience an understanding of like how things have changed with AI.
For sure. Well, Formas and tools like Formas have changed the game quite a while. Obviously, there were a few steps to that. I mean, obviously, we went from drawing on paper to digital solutions, a bit more like from today's perspective, legacy tools like Autodesk and AutoCAD and stuff like that. Then also Revit and all of the very well visualizing software. However, then AI came into place, and there were a few players in the AI space from very early, such as Comfy UI, which is a node-based workflow creator in the Gen AI space. And what Formas does is kind of a new way of working with visuals, a new way of working with Gen AI models, which delivers really a cutting edge technology or cutting edge imagery, thanks to the models that we operate on. Like, first of all, it is a creative workspace where we can blend all those not agentic, but Gen AI and model workflows into play and interplay with one another. Formas allows us to edit, reiterate, draw over, cut out, create videos, like plenty of stuff within the same workspace, which is kind of a new thing. And on top of that, Formas lowers the entry barrier, because the legacy tools usually were very heavy-duty software that required months or perhaps even years of learning to master the tooling, whereas Formas really lowers the barrier. And I think this is one of the greatest benefits of our software.
That's amazing. And do you guys also are heavily positioned around the exploration side? Because what I understand from designers that I have interacted with is that before the concept even like comes into play, there's a lot of like exploration and ideation that they need to do, and usually it was kind of like manual before. I mean, I don't know how it happens today, but do you guys like help with that as well? Because that's like a big chunk of work, or like an interesting space that kind of like needs help, and especially with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great intuition. Formas does that, and does that quite well. The ideation part, which is super crucial to the whole design process, where we're sort of kind of loose with the team, or just by ourselves. We're ideating and just brainstorming. Formas is great because Formas follows that, and can be kind of an extension of designer's brain, and also a partner to work with. It allows us for very fast ideation, but also iteration on those ideas, while keeping the consistency of output, and while keeping the agency of the designer who creates those creations. And we really do believe that the agency and preserving the creativity is key, and Formas aims to support that, and to extend designer's vision rather than replacing it.
Interesting. I'm just curious, what kind of people are you working with like at this point? Is it just any designer? It could be like a freelancer. It's more like a B2B business. Who can reach out, and you guys also help or put a team together? What's the business model like?
Sure. We work with a lot of studios, but also solo practitioners. Generally prosumers, I would say. So folks that are professionals in the field, or are bigger or smaller design studios, or rendering studios, or architects, people that work with visuals, with image. Those are our core. However, we also open up for broader audiences, such as real estate, for instance. This is kind of a big chunk for us as well, and interior visualization. Yeah, we're getting broader and broader, but our core is definitely designers, architects, and people in the AEC industry. However, I mean, we have so many super talented people that work with Formas, even like fashion designers or jewelry designers, like essentially everybody that works with some sort of form. However, back to your question, core is the prosumer, and B2B.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned real estate, because I'm seeing like a lot of real estate companies getting into AI, and kind of like trying to use the technology. There was another prop tech startup in the UK that just like raised crazy amount of funds this week. So yeah, and then even some of the messier industries that inherently are not very excited about tech, or probably like are slow to adopt it, are kind of using or experimenting with AI a lot. So and I love the fact that you guys have this this entire range, because generally when you look at amazing design products, it's either more like a SaaS like thing, or it's more like an enterprise. And for enterprise like products, it's like you said, the barrier to entry is like crazy. So yeah, it's really interesting for especially for fashion designers who are initially not just experimenting with different things to kind of like start an interior design shop or stuff like that. So yeah, very very interesting for entrepreneurs who are getting into design. So yeah. Cool. I think this is also something that I wanted to chat about, is building on top of frontier models, and how you guys kind of plugging in multiple frontier image models, whether it's Nano Banana or other frontier models from OpenAI, and how do you think about being this application layer on top of models you don't really control, right? And there is this entire debate of open weight and closed source models these days. I don't know if you're plugged into that, but I would love to get your thoughts there. But yeah, how do you like think about building on top of these models that you inherently don't control, but there is this application layer that lives on top of that?
For sure. Well, first of all, you're right that we do not inherently control them. However, we actually do it to a certain degree. Formas is a platform that, as I already mentioned, is a creative workspace that does not solely rely on certain model or certain way of generating. Obviously, we're working with cutting edge models that are available on the market. However, we also have our own models that are embedded into the platform. However, I do not believe that the core of what Formus is. What we really focus on is the creative freedom within those boundaries that those models create, so that we can bend those boundaries as much as we can, so that we can make sure that all the generations that we create in Nano Banana or Flux or any other models are to our liking, that we have control over them, that we have a consistency over them, that we can edit in Paint or remove pieces. So as much as we are in a way reliant on them, we do not consider ourselves a wrapper around them. It's more of a synergic situation where our workspace works well, obviously because they are working alongside us, but not only because of that.
Nice. And then there was recently this entire story, I think a couple of months back, that there were like these token bills, enterprise token bills were like kind of like going off the roof, and then you had this influx of a lot of Chinese models, and then there was this entire war and between the frontier models and Chinese models. So, as a result, we've been discussing that intelligence is getting commoditized, and those models, even on the frontier lab side, are getting cheaper and better constantly. Um, is that like a gift or a threat for a company like yours, or a startup like yours, or even other players? Because where does the where does the value sit if the models underneath are getting commoditized?
Right. Yeah, I guess this is bad news for AI wrappers, but it's also good news for us, because yeah, as mentioned, we try to work alongside and try to use those models to our liking, not the other way around. We're making sure that the value does not lie directly in models that we can control, but in the value that we bring into designers. We bring in this kind of an extension of the ways of working. And I believe that the fact that we can provide these many features between 2D and 3D, and being very creative in terms of types of imagery, types of video we're embedding into our generations, is something that really creates value, not getting value from the models themselves. Obviously, them getting monetized and them getting cheaper is great for business, for sure, and also allows our users to benefit from it more, because they can generate more and they can have even sorry, even more creative freedom to explore, to generate more images, to have more angles, to have longer videos, or to have more videos. Um, However, I do truly believe that we all work in this kind of synergetic ecosystem between model providers, us, and our users as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of like these, like you said, these AI wrappers will not be happy, but a lot of like these interesting layers or applications will get consolidated, and the best ones will win. Where you get actual value and great value, despite the fact that you have like these models underneath, and they're still getting better. Um, Cool. There's always this discussion on AI disrupting a lot of fields, of course, tech being one, and then there's some spaces or industries that are still slow to adopt technology. Forget about AI, and for some reason, architecture is kind of like a craft that a lot of like it comes with a lot of professional pride and years of training behind it, even real estate, for that matter. Do you get resistance from architects, like looking at AI as a threat, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, that's a really good question because working in AEC can be very physically dangerous, right? So you wanna like the best tools that make the building don't fall, or or even like situations like that. However, our work with architects has been very pleasant, and also we tend to like get into those conversations with architects where we look for feedback constantly to see where we can improve and where we can update, because they need tools that they can rely on, and we all are very much aware of the tech giants and their tools that architects we work together with use. And obviously some of them we would love to replace because the bar would be lower, the cost would be lower, things like that. But with some of them, we also want to synergize. Formas allows for very multi-step workflows where we also combine work in Rhino, for instance, one of those big softwares for architects, where essentially we can plug in workflow from Rhino with the workflow in Formas. So wherever it's possible, we try to find those bridges between platforms I mean, those gaps, and create bridges. In the same time, I would say architects are usually interested in finding new ways of working with AI. At least that was my experience so far. Um, Depends on the moment of the workflow, or the moment of the design process. But as you mentioned, for instance, the ideation process, like the very initial step, it's wild how well architects perform in Formas, and how happy they are of their outputs in this very particular part of the design process. So I would say, in general, industry maybe is not reluctant, but like a little hesitant, because they're used to their ways of working that are solid, that provide safe solutions for building and for engineering. However, they adopt maybe a little slower than the rest of industries, but they still do.
Yeah, I mean, like, you'd be surprised. There are a few developers that I have spoken to in the past few weeks, and they've been vehemently opposed of wipe coding, because they felt that they had like a certain discipline with coding, and when wipe coding kind of comes in, it really disrupts that. So it's not just in the design space, but also in the tech space. You still have developers and coders who still like that discipline of like designing the code themselves, and making sure that later on they don't have to like dig into uncertain areas just because they don't know how it's designed by the wipe coder app or whatever. So it's interesting to see that every space kind of like moving forward with AI. Also, I was really curious to know. I'm a very naive. I'm very new to design. Obviously, I'm not a designer, but obviously, I try my hands on these different apps that you have these days. Just in your like own view, what are the areas where AI in design kind of falls apart, and where it like really kills in terms of like the performance, and you can really do. I do see that the video side is a little weak. If you were as a non-designer to do something, but in your view, how is that placed currently?
Sure. Good question. Also, good question, especially that like every week there's a new model. Essentially, there are smaller models, there are bigger models, like the giants like Google or OpenAI that do not ship models that fast. I mean, like not every week, but like every few months, essentially. So the development is crazy, and recent developments in video and in imagery are pretty wild. However, I think again I would refer to this like human machine connection or interaction, where I would say in the design process this is still crucial to have the human insight into it, and like this humane or human control over it, where we are very specific about what we need and what we want. We can start with with some very general generation that's spat out by the AI, but at a later stage, like if you want to refine the design, you really have to like show it, and that I think it's getting really way better than 1 year ago. Like the feedback of it all works crazy well. And I feel like in the design right now, this is the best way to go, where you maintain the relation with the machine as much. I mean, the machine follows the leader, which is the designer, not the other way around. And I honestly think the results and the workflow itself is the best when that kind of relation is established and maintained. So I would say definitely a few models, but also the approach and the way of working with it matters a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I sometimes see crazy difference between a designer actually using AI tools and coming out with an output versus someone who's not so much into the trenches and just like trying their hands. And the outputs are absolutely like they're just so different and just crazily different. So that's definitely there. Cool.
Yeah.
You need growth at Formas, right? So and also you've also led growth for Miro before, right?
Yeah. In a way, yeah. I was growing communities in Miro. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Miro is famous for community-led growth. Like that's how I kind of found out about the platform. Through like a someone talking about it through a Telegram group. What did you really take from that playbook while you were working on the community growth there? And
Yeah.
uh, has it changed like with how the world functions today? Because in a way, community led growth is in every space. Every company is trying to do that versus just like a few players doing it back then. I mean, Notion was one, and then Miro comes to mind, of course. So yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about how that has changed.
Well, I believe this is one of the best ways of growing a company through community, especially when you have a really engaged community, like we did in Miro and like we have in Formas. Um, there's a few like very strong points or like things that the community led growth produces. So first of all, there's an engagement and a constant feedback loop between the community and operators or the app or platform owners, which is absolutely crucial. Like we want to make our community the happiest community ever, and we constantly iterate, constantly work so that our community feedback gets better and better and better. Um, we love what our community creates, and we love that in Miro. And right now, I truly love it in Formas. We are lucky enough to have a community of architects and designers and people that work with visuals, and it's crazy, like how gratifying it is to see when like you create a platform, you create a tool for those people, and they heart their brains around, and crazy beautiful visuals and very smart ones. So the gratification is a value of itself, for the founders or for people that worked in this company. In Miro, we also create. I mean, not I. When I joined Miro, it was already there. Created Miroverse, which is essentially a templates gallery, which is also great because like we can see how community works, like what are the needs of the community, and what are the ways of working, like what do people want. And there was also a little bit of social media aspect to it, where you could like vote for a template or like one, etc. And we kind of created this kind of growth loop or whatever, or community initiative in Formas, where you can create your own style, and folks can like replicate your style, and you don't have to do it from scratch. You can just like borrow from someone, and then your creations will look very much like this person's creation, in the way of like use of materials or colors or axonometry or plenty of other factors. And it also works quite well. Like we really like to see how people engage with each other's styles, and how they comment on them, and and are quite vocal about it. So that's really cool. And last thing is also the fact that we really love to highlight our community's work. We recently started to include them in all our correspondence, both in like marketing and transactional emails, where we just felt like it's really nice to show our community's work to the rest of our community, So we started including the visuals and images created by our community for our community to the emails that are directed to the rest of the community, which also works super well. We had like a lot of very much organic presence online because of that, and it's pretty cool. I love community-led growth. It's just
Yeah, definitely. I guess also it kind of like community kind of becomes your become your ambassador, right? After a point, and it just becomes a loop, and you kind of like grow very organically after a point. I've seen that quite a bit in the blockchain Web3 industry, because that was community led primarily. And yeah, and definitely some of the platforms and programs that you talked about. Do you guys have something specific in Formas that people can join? I also read somewhere you guys work a lot with campus students.
yeah. Yeah, we have a few ways to engage. Definitely, we created a campus program for students, but also for educators. So I invite you all to check it out. We will be rolling it out. It's already on. However, we have summer, so schools are not open. So we're gonna hit it pretty hard in September and October. So definitely worth checking out, because there's also a special discounted pricing for students and for educators, which is, I believe, like 70% off, which is crazy. And also we have our Discord, which is very much alive, where folks exchange ideas, report things, chat with us, chat with founders. Really great, honestly, working very well both for the community and for us as kind of information exchange. And we also have our monthly workshops with Carlos and me being our founders, where we explore new features, where we explore ways of working. There's also a Q&A for everyone to engage with, and it's been pretty good relation we have with our community, and it's happily growing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Also, if yeah, I want to talk about AI in a broader way. A lot of AI conversation, I mean, you'd agree, is very US centric right now. And you're building out of Poland, obviously, and with the Singaporean company, which gives you, an understanding of like how things are running in these different continents. What does the AI startup scene look like in Poland and in Europe, in your view?
Sure. Well, I would say the shift is real from US centric to worldwide. Obviously, historically, but also it's true still that, or at least I believe that the best funding you can get is still in US. But it changes, and there is so many super talented founders that decided to keep building in Europe. And honestly, I love it because there was a time that whenever somebody started a startup, got a little bit of money, straight up going to San Francisco, and they were gone. And right now, it kind of shifts. There's a huge ecosystem both in Poland and in Europe in general, and there's plenty of startups that are worth watching. Some of them are quite obvious, like 11 Labs, which is essentially a Polish startup, but with US capital. That's one of our few unicorns in Poland. But there's so much more. There's Lovable, for instance, from Stockholm, which is also a crazy hub right now. Like I recently saw a post, a map of Stockholm, and there's like 10 blocks or like 7 blocks, and like 200, super well funded and very successful startups. So yeah, I think the hubs kind of got decentralized from West Coast of US or New York City to many different places, and I'm very happy about it, and I'm happy that that Europe is having its momentum, and specifically very proud of Polish startups and Polish ecosystem as well. We're growing, and I'm happy about it.
Absolutely. I think Mistral, 11 Labs, they really put Europe on the map. And
Yeah.
in terms of Asia, I guess a lot of like startups from a lot of like these models from Asia, and even Servam recently launched in India. So a lot of like these players are coming up, which is, and actually that's the reason we started this show, to kind of like bridge the gap between the US and other continents, and to like kind of bring it all together, because I feel that eventually it's going to be like it's going to be like one very interconnected world, and it's not going to be like East versus West.
Yeah.
I don't know, like we I mean, right now it's very geopolitical sometimes, but eventually I feel it's going to be like people are just going to go for the right model, the right technology, and no one would care where it's from. So yeah, I'm really excited about AI in general, and especially in Asia and Europe as well. Cool. I guess it was a great conversation, Michał, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Diksha. It was a pleasure, and and thank you all for watching.
Amazing. If AI in design is your world, follow along on X, YouTube, and LinkedIn to watch the full episode, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.